Whatever happened to accountability? The strip club, the Pacers game, flashing a gun on IG. All your family and friends are pissing your career away. I am sorry about my horrendous singing voice. I know I normally sound like Elton John or Freddie Mercury when I'm singing, but I am still fighting through this flu. I composed that nice little ditty this morning while watching this interview with Ja Morant. Throughout the entire interview, I kept waiting and waiting and waiting to see some accountability from Ja Morant, waiting to see some remorse, some tiny bit of semblance that he understands what's at stake here. And look, ESPN really messed up here with this interview by giving this assignment to Jalen Rose. Jalen Rose, Father Jalen Rose, lead pastor at Woke United Methodist. No wonder this interview was full of softball questions. No wonder Ja Morant was not pressed to give real answers. Jalen Rose hasn't put pressure on anyone since his days in the NBA. There was no accountability in this interview, none. There has been minimal accountability handed down from Adam Silver in the NBA front office. The league gave Ja Morant an 8-game suspension and gave him credit for time served. So this was essentially a 3-game suspension, but that's okay. That's okay. Adam Silver also required Ja Morant to go through extensive inpatient counseling. It was kind of like rehab for troubled millionaires who can't get their head out of their own ass. This rehab facility is located in Florida, and let me tell you, they must have one hell of a program. When drug addicts go through rehab, the process lasts anywhere from 3 to 6 months, usually. The first few days or the first few weeks, depending on which drugs you were abusing, are the detox process. But the majority of the time spent in rehab is spent focusing on behavioral issues. This process takes months. It takes time. Unless, of course, you're Ja Morant, or you attend this facility in Florida, because all of Ja Morant's problems were magically solved in 48 hours. You really expect me to bite into that shit sandwich? 48 hours? You can't even thaw out the woke wiener in 48 hours. Yet you expect me to believe Ja Morant solved all his issues in the span of 2 days? If this interview with ESPN and Jalen Rose is any indication, Ja Morant hasn't learned a damn thing. I'm going to break it down into a couple of clips and react to each portion. The interview started off with Jalen Rose asking a hard-hitting question. Ja, speak to me, brother. Father Jalen is curious. That gun you were flashing on Instagram, who did that gun belong to? What? What the hell does it matter who the gun belonged to? What's that old saying, possession is 9/10 of the law? I didn't see anyone else in that video. I saw Ja Morant with a gun in his hand. Now, a truly remorseful person, someone willing to hold themselves accountable, they would take responsibility for this, right? Listen to Ja Morant's response to the question. Roll the film.
Whose gun were you holding?
Felt like, I was releasing stress, and I felt like it was healthy for me, which it wasn't. And that caused me to do some things that, I shouldn't have. The gun wasn't mine. It's not who I am. I don't condone any type of violence, but I take, full responsibility, for my actions.
First of all, you did not take full responsibility for your actions. Full responsibility would be you saying, it doesn't matter who owned the gun. I had the gun in my possession. I posted the clip to Instagram. I am to blame here, not anyone else. Instead, Ja Morant says, it wasn't mine. I swear it wasn't mine. That's like the dude riding down the interstate with an 8-ball in the glove compartment. Not the magic woke 8-ball, which also should be illegal. But I'm talking about the snowy 8-ball. He gets pulled over, cops find the dope, and he says, it's not mine. You think the cops are buying that bullshit? If there's 4 people in the car and none of them claim the drugs, guess who's going to jail? All of them. Ja Morant also claimed he was behaving this way to relieve stress. Okay. I mean, that's a strange way to relieve stress. I relieve stress by going to happy hour, playing golf, maybe gambling at the casino. I've never thought of relieving stress by pretending to keep it real and flash a firearm on social media. And look, I am not anti gun. Matter of fact, I have one sitting right over there. But you're not going to find me relieving stress by flaunting it on camera. Now, everything I just said should have been said by Jalen Rose. Now, you don't have to embarrass Ja Morant. You can frame the narrative in a softer way than I did, but if you're conducting this interview, you at least have to follow up. You at least have to point this out. Of course, Jalen Rose didn't do that. He allowed Ja Morant to escape accountability and, like a robot, moved on to the next question. The next hard-hitting question from Father Jalen Rose was mentioning the incident last month after the Pacers game. This was the incident where Ja Morant and his entourage of homies were acting like teenaged boys who were given their first laser pointer and harassing members of the Pacers security by pointing a red dot on their chest. Listen to Ja Morant's response here. Once again, he tries accepting responsibility, but then he deflects. He supposedly accepts responsibility for what happened. Then he claims the NBA investigated this situation and found no evidence. Well, if that's the case and nothing allegedly happened, then what are you accepting responsibility for? Watch for yourself.
There was the incident allegedly after the Pacers game, and somebody was allegedly pointing a red dot at some of their personnel. Can you shed light on what happened after that game?
Majority of the things, that's happened in the past, obviously, I kind of put myself into by even being there. The NBA investigated, everything thoroughly and, found no evidence of anything.
Just because the NBA conducted an investigation and didn't find anything, that does not absolve you from being responsible. All that means is the NBA didn't have enough evidence to bust your ass. About 10 years ago, I was arrested for DUI. It was a tough time in my life. I was doing things that were out of character for me, this obviously being one of them. I was extremely lucky that night. I was blacked out, drove my car out of the parking lot. I guess I fell asleep, ended up rolling into a streetlight at about 5 miles an hour. Like I said, I was very lucky. If I had made it onto the interstate, God only knows what would have happened. Probably would not be here. But long story short, my DUI case ended up being dismissed due to lack of evidence. Since I wasn't injured and no one else was involved in the wreck, the cops didn't take me to the hospital. They took me to jail. I refused to take a breathalyzer for obvious reasons. Even in my state of stupor, I was cognizant enough to not hand them free evidence. But just because my case was dismissed, it doesn't mean it didn't happen. It doesn't mean I wasn't responsible for what happened. It's the same thing here with Ja Morant. Just because the NBA didn't have enough evidence to hold you accountable, it does not mean you should absolve yourself. Jalen Rose proceeded to ask Ja Morant about two separate incidents involving his mother and sister. The incident with his sister, the volleyball game incident, I explained that to you guys the other day. Now, this incident with his mother happened at the mall. His mom had gotten into an altercation with an employee at the Finish Line shoe store. Ja Morant showed up to the store with 9 of his homies to intimidate the dude that was working there trying to make a living. Watch for yourself.
And another incident that allegedly happened at the mall with your mom, what can you say about what happened with that situation?
I got a call. I went to, make sure my mom was safe. That's my lifeline. That's who birthed me. So I went to make sure she was safe. Once I realized that, I left the scene.
And then there's a situation that potentially happened with your sister surrounding a volleyball game. Can you shed some light into what took place in that scenario?
That's my baby sister. I received a call and, was checking on her safety. Another situation where, once I found out she was safe, I left the scene.
Let me ask you something. How many of you guys have had to rush to the mall to intimidate someone who got into an altercation with your mom? I can tell you how many times I've had to do that. 0. You want to know why? My mom's not getting into an altercation with the shoe salesman. If they don't have her size, my mom doesn't start a scene. If the dude working there's an asshole, my mom doesn't get in his face or call me to come handle it. She just takes her business elsewhere. That's how most normal people handle situations like this. They realize they have too much to lose by getting into an unnecessary fight with some dude making minimum wage. Now, you saw in that clip, Ja Morant claims, "I don't condone violence." Oh, really? Really? Clearly, Ja Morant isn't mature enough to understand that his words mean absolutely nothing at this point. You are being scrutinized based on your actions. Let's see. Ja Morant doesn't condone violence. You're intimidating employees at the mall by using the threat of violence. Someone in your entourage slapped a phone out of a kid's hand at your sister's volleyball game. You threatened a 17-year-old kid with a gun over a pickup basketball game. You've had altercations with mall cops where you've intimidated them through the threat of violence. The incident with security after the Pacers game. I don't know about you guys, but that sounds like condoning violence to me. The NBA suspending Ja Morant for 8 games and giving him credit for games already missed, that is a slap on the wrist. Adam Silver basically gave Ja Morant a woke hug. "Everything will be okay, Ja. Come over here and let me see how far my alien fingers can go." It's weird though, it's strange. I don't see anyone in the media talking about Ja Morant's privilege. Now look, on one hand, I can understand the hesitancy to give Ja Morant a lengthy suspension. Playoffs are 4 weeks away. You want your star players on the floor. The Grizzlies, one of the top contenders in the Western Conference, if they're without Ja Morant, they're done. But let me ask you this. What happens if there is another situation like this involving Ja Morant, or it gets escalated? The optics will be terrible for the NBA. Adam Silver, he's going to be blamed for going easy on him. People will say the NBA had a chance to step in and stop this, but didn't take it. This is a serious pattern of negative behavior with Ja Morant. Even though I hold him responsible, I'm not entirely sure he's the instigator here. His family, his friends, they seem to start these altercations, and guess who is left holding the blame? Ja Morant. The friends you can get rid of. Bit more complex when talking about the family. But it might be in the best interest of Ja Morant to distance himself from his family, at least for a little while. Either that, or controlling the way he chooses to respond when they call and ask him to handle these altercations they get into. Because at the end of the day, the only person in this scenario who has anything to lose is Ja Morant. The NBA doesn't care about the behavior of his sister. Nike doesn't care that Mama Morant is starting shit at the mall. If his entourage gets into an altercation with NBA security, Adam Silver, he can't suspend Herman the homie. The only person left holding the bag, the only person who will be held responsible is Ja Morant. But give me your thoughts. Did you think Ja Morant accepted any accountability in that interview with Jalen Rose? I didn't see it. Maybe you did. Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com. KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys later.